So everybody's been to school here. Many people here are teachers, many people here are administrators, many people here are trying to influence what we teach in schools. But most people, when they think of what we teach, they think of social studies, math, science, language arts, where to punctuate, how to capitalize, the periodic table, the laws of physics, the dates of the Civil War, all that information. But we believe there's another curriculum. There's a whole nother dimension to the curriculum. We sometimes call it the social curriculum. Some people call it the emotional curriculum. It's not written down all the time, but it's just as powerful and in some ways more essential. And if you think about the social or emotional curriculum, you start to ask yourself different questions. What do we teach in the social curriculum? What are we teaching about emotions? What are we teaching kids about relationship skills, about coping strategies, around problem solving, around stress regulation, around knowing themselves? What are we teaching? And when we start asking those questions, we get to a different kind of content, a different kind of information. It's almost like we shift from information to inspiration. And we start to ask ourselves, we've been asking kids, I've been going around the country talking to young people in focus groups. Here's the question we ask them. What do you wish all Americans knew today? What do you wish all Americans knew? You know what kind of answers we get? We get, I wish all Americans knew serenity. I wish all Americans knew how important it is to make a difference. I wish all Americans knew not to judge people by their color. I wish all Americans knew that we need a change. I wish all Americans knew I want a chance. Very powerful lessons, in my view, the lessons that matter most. And you could answer that question for yourselves here in the audience as we get to the panel. What do you wish your children knew? What do you want other people's children to learn? What's the lesson you think matters most? Our premise, this team here, and about 2 million other people like them around the world in countries like Kenya and India and China and Singapore and Panama and France and Germany. These 4 people represent teachers who are advocating for a particular curriculum to become critical and important to the future of education, and that is the curriculum of inclusion. It is to say, hashtag everyone. Everyone hashtag is made to matter. Made to matter. Every child is made to matter. And if the school doesn't teach that curriculum, then it's not a good school. I don't care whether they got Rhodes Scholars or SAT Scholars or Ivy League Scholars or NFL Scholars. I don't care where they go. Our view is if the school is not teaching that every child is made to matter, it is not a good school. And if it does teach that every child is made to matter, every child, no exceptions, a role, a prominence, a gift, a power to make a difference, not to be made fun of, not to be excluded, not to be bullied, not to be laughed at in class because they're not good in this subject or that subject. If the school isn't teaching that, it's not a good school. And our commitment, and it is a commitment that we believe in, and we are, I would dare say, even though I'm not speaking for other folks, we're ready to give our careers, our lives to this commitment. That we want to make every school in the world a school that teaches made to matter by putting unified sports at the center, teaching children to learn to play unified so they can grow up to live unified. And we don't have to say it in this room today, but this country needs that lesson, not just our kids. You know, when we ask kids about their community, sometimes they say, you know, I like my friends, I get along well, my school's a good place. Then we ask them about the country. You know what they say? Country's childish. Country's full of bullies. Country's divisive. Country's immature. You know what they're talking about? Adults. So this is not a panel to discuss simply what young people are hungry for and what teachers are capable of doing in this new generation of promoting unified and inclusive practices. This is also about what our country needs so that our schools can start us on that road. So with that, I will start our informal conversation. We have Slido, and I think, of course, I have no idea how to use it, but apparently they will tell us if there are questions you're asking on Slido. They'll give those to us, but we'll have time in the last 10 or 15 minutes to also engage in a discussion. And since we're a small enough group, we can make this feel a little bit like a seminar, where we can make this extremely interactive and I hope powerful and helpful for you, but also helpful for us as we try to learn about how to teach what matters most. In our view, what matters most is everyone made to matter, every school an inclusive school. So, enough from me. Let's let Erika Guerrero tell us, as a classroom teacher, as an expert educator. Erika, introduce yourself and give us some sense of how you teach, even as you're teaching academic information, how you teach lessons that matter most.
So my name is Erika Guerrero, and I teach at Alamo Heights High School. I teach both special ed classes, life skills, and I'm also a CTE career prep teacher. And so I'm a little bit of an anomaly because I'm mixing gen ed classrooms with special ed classrooms, and then mixing those and preparing students for life after high school. And so I am able to instruct the students to work as partners and to really focus on their careers and when they want to go from there, and teach them their individual job skills and the things they need to do there, learning to communicate with people, learning to collaborate with people, learning to use their life skills, and infuse it just into their everyday interaction. So every lesson I take, I am looking at, is it going to improve the quality of their life? Is it going to improve their social opportunities outside of here? What is their life going to look like when they leave me? And is it going to be involved, meaningful, and engaged within sports, work, and all the parts that every one of us needs to be fulfilled emotionally, mentally, physically?
So can you give us an example? Let's say you're teaching. So you teach general education. You'll teach some science. You'll teach some literature. You'll teach all that kind of stuff, right? You'll have multiple subjects?
I teach career prep and vocational.
Okay.
Yeah.
So give us an example of a lesson on career prep that also is about leading a meaningful and engaged life. Can you tell us how, pretend like we're your students. How many people are looking for career advice? Probably most of us, right? Okay, so you've got a lot of hands out here. They all want, they're coming in on Monday morning for career class, and you want to teach them lessons about career development that also pull their hearts and minds and souls into the lesson. Give us an example of how you might do that.
So one of the lessons may be working on teams and collaborating, and just teaching students that when you get out into a job, you're going to work with coworkers with all different levels of abilities, and learning to bring out the strengths of every person and work with that, and not to just looking at somebody assuming they can't do a task. If you're working with your teammate or your classmate or your coworker, finding a way and thinking outside of the box and having the students think outside of the box to create opportunities so that they're all included in the job and they can perform the job. So it's really teaching them to think critically and collaborate, which are two big things our focus is on, is thinking critically and collaboratively to be able to transform any jobs, tasks that we're learning, whether it's running, we have a coffee shop that we run, and in the coffee shop, students are responsible for learning to order the products and do the stocking and do the inventory and help customers and greet customers and so forth. And thinking of all the different skills. If a student is nonverbal, how are you going to get them to be able to greet a customer and help the customer, creating different visuals and allowing the students to use those accommodations to be able to assist. So it teaches the gen ed student to think outside of the box and be able to meet anybody's needs and any customer's needs. And it also pushes the student with a disability to push them out of the comfort zone and go in and employ those skills and be able to greet a customer and be included and not pushed aside.
Gotcha. So when we were backstage, I asked Erika if she had one word to describe the lesson that she thinks matters most. Her word was?
Dignity.
Dignity. And anybody else would have, anybody, yeah, so we can do some clicks on dignity, right. So is there a moment in your teaching career where you felt you really were able to communicate to a student that he or she had dignity?
I think they communicate to me every day they have dignity.
Oh,
But
isn't that beautiful?
I think the most important lesson is that when we are teaching students to work with each other, whether it's a partner to an athlete to a partner, is teaching them to treat each other with dignity and not take each other's dignity away. I don't want to see somebody treating somebody as a buddy or a helper. They're your age, they're your equal, they're your partner. You are learning together. You are both responsible for this task. You're not responsible to do it for them. You're not responsible to speak for them. And just training that, it's hard, it's difficult to actually train them. You know, when somebody walks into the coffee shop and you have a student with a disability and without a disability, and a person not knowing goes up to the person without a disability and says, hey, can I have a coffee order? It's teaching them to be partners, and without me saying, for them to turn around and say, I don't know, why don't you ask, you know, so-and-so, she's working the counter today. It's so teaching those things to not let people take their voice and their dignity away. Beautiful.
Beautiful. I know there's some teachers in the room that want to jump in on that conversation. Let's go over Jamaal. You were, we've all celebrated at some level these pictures of you as a little boy going out to your first track and field event. Tell us a little bit about your story and how Special Olympics and sports entered your life and what happened as a result of that.
Well, I grew up in Port Arthur, Texas. I attended Sam Houston, where I attended education class, special education, and that's how I got introduced to the Special Olympics Unified, and had some great teachers in there just helping me out and trying to help me do my work, and that's how I was able to go by and do some of the athletic part, where I found out, you know, so when you ever heard me talk, I said I had wings, I can fly. That's because I found it through Special Olympics. That was my first opportunity to know that I had a gift that I didn't know.
So I think all of us, when we think NFL, we think running back, we think all pro, we think a man who is on the razor sharp edge of the best athlete in the world, right? Close to it. Mm-hmm. When we talk Special Olympics, most people think, well, this is about every athlete. It's not about that. Mm-hmm. How does someone who has risen to your level see, and why is it important when you look at the Special Olympics community, the unified community, why is that model of sport just as important, if it is, as being an all-pro running back in the National Football League?
I feel like I had definitely confidence in my abilities of playing sports. And on the other part, I didn't have confidence in my abilities. And when I wanted to help students out to be comfortable and feel comfortable and feel that they can feel comfortable in themselves, that's when I came out and I had told Tim. Tim had flew down here and from L.A. and introduced me, and he asked me, do I want to do the Special Olympics in L.A., and I was like, I would love to, because growing up with disability was hard for me. I grew up in poverty where my mom didn't have the resource to give me tutoring, to stay on top of my game in high school or elementary. When I first feel like that I had confidence when I went to college. And that's when I feel like when I went to college, they had study hall, and that would help me out a lot. Study hall helped me out. It built me up as a person. I had one-on-one with teachers that helped me out in every lesson I had. They was talking to me nice. They was helping me out. They was diggity. They had diggity with me. They related to me. And that's when I felt like, man, I have this ability that I never, because when people picked on me, I hide my abilities. I wasn't comfortable to come out. I just stayed in the closet. And then when I started working on my abilities, they started getting better and better and better. That's why you're never supposed to run from fear. You're supposed to face the head up. And I was able to face the head up And that's why I wanted to be a part of the Special Olympics, because I wanted to get to every kid, to every student that feel like they have fear that they wasn't able to reach their full potential. And I feel like we can do anything that, the norms can do, I call them. But that's
any norms in here? I hope not.
I feel like, in my mind, I feel God made everybody different, and that's the way you are. That's the way He made me, and I'm happy to accept the way He made me. So that's why I say my confidence. That's why if you build a little kid up with confidence, he'll be happy who he are.
Right. Wow. So Jamaal, if you could talk to your 10-year-old self, what would you say to that little fella?
If I could go back and talk to myself, I definitely taught confidence in myself. I grew up with no confidence. I grew up being picked on because I wasn't the smartest in the class. But when you put a ball in my hand, everybody treat me like I was the man. And it's like I go to the classroom, they laugh at me. When I go to the field, they cheer me. And I was able to, if I able to go back to myself, and I was able to go back to that little room I was in every night crying, that I would tell Jamaal, it's gonna be all right. Let's work on your abilities that you are scared to work on. Let's work on your fears. Let's face look yourself in the mirror and face that person you're scared of. Once you have that same confidence you have on the field or in sports, and that's what I can go back and tell myself as a 10-year-old.
Beautiful, beautiful. Never supposed to run from fear. Well, a lot of people ran from you after you started running. It's a beautiful lesson, and I guess we have this captured on film. There's so many ways in which you put that, Jamaal, so beautiful. Tasha, so you want to be a public speaker.
Yes.
You want to share lessons with the world. Tell us where you're from. Tell us how old you are, because you could fool some people in this room.
My name is Tasha, and I am from Immokalee, Florida. If you don't know where Immokalee is, you probably know where Naples is. And I am 19 years old. I go to Immokalee High School, and I am a senior.
Senior in high school. So why do you want to be a public speaker? What makes you want to speak in front of big crowds and have people listen to you like the folks in the room today?
Because I want to share my story on how difficult it was growing up, having a disability, losing parents, and I want to advocate for others that don't have the voice yet to advocate for themselves.
So can you give us a little sense of your story, the difficulty growing up and losing folks, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. So when I was 2, I lost my father by gun violence. When I was 13, I lost my mom. When I lost my mom, that's when everything fell apart. I went into this depression stage, didn't know if I could ever find a light or find hope in myself again. I felt into this person that I was not. I felt like that there was no reason for me to live. I tried to commit suicide after my mom passed away because I was hurt and I wanted the woman that brought me into the world back. But I knew God did it for a purpose. And so now I look at myself every day and I'm like, I thank God for everything He has done for me. Look where I'm at now. Because when I was in the deepest of my moments in depression, Special Olympics was right there. They brought me in, they took me in as their own. So,
first of all, thank you for being comfortable enough to tell us that part of yourself. When you began to see the light, if I can use the language, you said there was no light, but at some point, light started to come back, right?
The light started to come back.
Can you tell us what that was like? Where did you see it? Where did the light shine?
Because I was in middle school, and my teacher, Ms. Johnson, she saw so much anger in me because I was going out on anybody. I really didn't care who I went off on because I was hurt. And she gave me a piece of paper and a pencil. She's like, I want you to write down how you're feeling, and then I want you to present it to the class. I want you to speak in front of the class. I wrote it down and I spoke in front of the class, and then it's like this little light just popped up, and I'm like, I'm starting to get back to myself. I'm not feeling angry anymore. And then when I got into high school, the light became bigger because I found Special Olympics.
So that teacher knew something important about how to teach what matters most, if I'm not mistaken. That was, this is where, if you were in the military service and you saw a moment and you did something heroic, you get a Purple Heart, you get and the world remembers you. And if you're a police officer or a firefighter and you save a child, the world will recognize you. But too often a teacher, like, what was your middle school teacher's name who did that?
Miss Johnson.
Miss Johnson. So wherever she is, just let's give some props to Miss Johnson, because she saw a moment when a young child was in pain, but instead of punishing, which I'm sorry to say a lot of us did as teachers, a lot of us still do, or as parents, we do this, instead of punishing, instead of blaming, instead of putting it all on you, she invited you to come out, in a way, to come out, like Jamaal was saying, to come out and not be afraid of your own fear and your own anger. What a beautiful tipping point she created for you. So give us just a little snapshot about Special Olympics. So you're in high school and you're on what was the first experience? How did you get involved?
Oh, so my big sister, Katrina, she came home with like medals and ribbons. And I'm like, how did you get that? Because I was jealous, because I was just sitting at home being
Without the
Tasha.
medal.
And so then she was like, I'm in Special Olympics. And I was like, who do I talk to? And she was like, you have to talk to Miss Stevenson, which is my teacher and a coach. And I was like, okay. So I went and talked to Miss Stevenson. Like, at first, me and her didn't really bump heads that good. But then, then we started getting along and things, so yeah.
And what sports did you start with?
I started with basketball and bowling.
Okay. How's your bowling score? Do you remember your best score?
No.
No.
But I know I'm good now. I'm good.
Okay,
now.
I'm sure you're
I'm good. I'm good now.
Just checking to see if I could beat you before I challenge you.
I'm good now.
That's great. That's great. Eddie, I want to come back to you. In some ways, you've touched on all these. You have your own experience in school. You have an experience as a world-class athlete, even still today. You have an experience playing on a unified team. Now you have an experience in some ways as a teacher. We're inviting you back into the movement to be our teacher, right? To tell us what you learned. Go back a little bit to high school and just describe how you got involved and what was going on for you and what led you to that.
So for me personally in high school, I went to school out of district, and going through, I was kind of a breakout athlete. I always played as many sports as I possibly could, but the unified sports program was presented to me by my assistant principal, and at first we had probably maybe 4 people, like, all right, so it was me, a couple other people, and they said, we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna have a running clock, we're gonna be all-inclusive, and it's just gonna be great. So we said, I'm all for it, because me coming to the school out of district, I kind of knew what it was like to be kind of the odd guy out before I started making friends. So we put it together, and initially we thought, we're gonna have like the 2 moms up in the stands and maybe like a couple dads in there. But the first game, running clock, basketball, jerseys, warm-ups, the whole 9. And the whole community came out. There wasn't an empty seat in the whole place. And the final score of the game, I want to say, was 12-10. But when I say every time there was a basket made, you would have thought we hit the game-winning shot at the NBA Finals. And for me personally, being out there and helping my guys like Marcus and Manju, for me, I've been on teams, same with Jamaal, I've been on teams where, I make the game-winning catch or score the game-winning touchdown and have the whole crowd chant my name. And for me, I felt such a disconnect from the fact that I know a lot of my partners would never get the opportunity to feel that same emotion and grandeur. They would never get the opportunity to feel that. And for me, that kind of broke something inside me, because it kind of broke my heart, because knowing that there's so many individuals that go through the school system, go through life, not having that emotional stability, not having that moment for their own personal growth. And for me, that really was my catalyst to catapult me into fortunate I was able to go to play Division I football and now be in the NFL. But to always have that with me, knowing that every time I step out in the field, every time I do an interview, I know that there's millions of kids that would die to be in my spot, to die to be in my shoes. And the fact that going all the way back to high school, I was able to give a kid that, even for a split second, for them to make a layup and the whole crowd erupts, for them to be able to experience that, it really stuck with me and still affects me to this day.
It's beautiful, but I got to press you because I want to know when I was first 4 kids that the assistant principal or the coach asked. So the way I think, if this was when you were a freshman or a sophomore?
Sophomore.
Okay. So if I think of a sophomore all-star football player in high school, first of all, I'm intimidated already. Because obviously that guy is super popular. Everybody wants to know him. Everybody wants to talk to him. All the coaches are always around him. Teachers are always asking him what he's doing next, what trophies he won, where he's going on the weekend. That's not the guy I see going to a Special Olympics unified practice. I just don't connect there. I think that guy isn't doing that. That guy's into his own world, and he's into the elite thing, and he's getting all the accolades. What made you choose to, despite all that, if I'm fair, go to that first practice or that first event?
For me, it was really a step of faith. You know, my assistant principal, he was the guy I trusted and loved. And for me, I knew there was, even just walking around through the halls of Granville, I knew there was kind of a disconnection, a hierarchy in high school. You know, like you were kind of saying, like you have your people that, everybody loves, talks to, you know, wants to rub shoulders with, and you have, as you go down, you kind of have the people that are forgotten or the people that are mistreated or bullied. And for me, again, coming to school out of district, I felt that disconnect, and I couldn't really live with myself going through and being one of the quote-unquote elite people and seeing that injustice, even just in my high school, and not doing anything about it, and kind of turning a bad eye to it, just not even recognizing it. So for me, I needed to stand up and even me knowing that kind of, you know, hey, I'm the athlete. I have guys coming to my practice and things like that. I knew that for me to be able to give that to some of these other kids and some of these people that are forgotten or don't really get to be in the spotlight as often, if I can give a piece of that to them, it'll be all worth it.
That's the best thing I ever heard from a guy wearing a Yankee cap. I gotta say, I'm trying to get over it, but it just keeps flashing at me. But anyway, that's a different story because I'm a Red Sox fan and they did win the World Series. But that's neither here nor there. You just said a word. I'm going to ask everybody if I can use this word that Eddie just used. You said it was injustice. To watch injustice, you couldn't tolerate it. When you hear that word, does Jamaal, Tasha, Erika, what comes to mind? Is this a movement about justice and injustice? Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense to you? Erika, do you see it that way?
Yes, but I think that the movement is coming from the youth and their frustration and their desire to change things and the world and what's happening. And it's interesting because I am their sponsor, but I do very little of the work. I kind of see myself as, if you have a bowling alley and the lane, I'm just the bumpers, and the students are the force and they're going. So my job's only to support them as they fight injustice and so forth in their community. I just kind of help lead them the right way, and they go forth, and I learn from them. And so it's really interesting also to see the growth on the athlete sites and the partners who are leaving the high schools. Before they leave, they come to me. I've seen so many come to me and say, I need this at my college. I need to continue this. Can you help set me up? And so it's really amazing to see the way the youth are now becoming adults and taking over some of those movements.
Nice. They just don't want you. There you go.
I feel the same way too. The reason why I got back into it because it kind of hurt my feelings when I was growing up. A lot of kids when I was growing up in poverty, didn't have the resource to get the right education or get the right tutorings to get where they need to get ahead. And when I decided to come back with Special Olympics, it would just hurt for me because I look back and I'm like, man, my fellow classmates, they didn't have the people pushing them. They didn't have no support. And that's what kind of hurt me, you know what I'm saying? I feel like that's what kind of made me feel injustice, like, to want to do something, because I feel like they didn't have a voice. I feel like I'm in a step in my life where I was very successful, and I'm, like he said, they don't get to feel that, you know what I'm saying? It made me feel inside, like I need to say something, I need to talk about it. But that would make me feel like, I feel like we all come together, we all different, and yeah, we got disabilities, and that's the way we are, that's the way, I feel like if you have great support behind you, because I'm the only reason why I'm successful because I had people support me. I feel like everybody that's successful have great people that are pushing them and being successful. I have I have a lot of people in my life that make me successful. I can't do this by myself.
Right.
A lot of people want to give up, and they have people just tell them don't give up. And I could have been one of the people like back in my hometown gave up, but I have great supports behind me, and that's the only reason why I'm here where I'm at.
But you had the guts, Jamaal. I don't know I remember one of the things you told me is that when you came out, you keep using this language, which I think is super cool, that you came out and said that you had a disability, that you'd been involved, that a lot of guys in NFL locker rooms came up to you and said, me too. Like, I never told anybody. Yeah. Is that true?
That's true. I feel like once I announced that at the World Games, and a lot of guys was coming up to me, man, I feel scared to even tell anybody I had a disability, but you make me feel so comfortable till now I can say I had a disability. Because I mean, a lot of people hide behind doors about certain things, and some people don't want to know people's secrets, and that's people don't want to tell their secrets, and that was one of my secrets. I didn't want to tell nobody to tell, but I just got fed up, and I was like he said, I just got fed up. I felt like I had to be a voice for other people.
Yeah, go ahead, Erika.
I think that what you did is you normalized having a disability, and that's a big step at our campus. So we've been doing this now 6 years, and having an intellectual disability has been normalized. It's not something to be ashamed of, it's not a secret, and actually every school is going to have some of the bullying, the meanness, and so forth. But at my school, you don't do it to my students, because their peers will stand up for them before I ever need to. And so you may see it in other groups, but I see that the students with intellectual disabilities are so supported by their peers and stand up for each other, and that the students now have the knowledge and the courage to be able to speak up and say, hey, it's okay, like it's normal. Having a disability isn't something to be ashamed of, and they're just like you, and they matter as much as you do.
Are the kids better than the adults on this issue? Erika, that's what I hear you saying, that the kids are going to teach the rest of the country something here.
I believe so, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, all the adults are at our school and the campus and my school district are super supportive, but the students are changing the world, yes.
Yeah. Tasha, do you feel like you're working for justice?
I sure do.
You sure?
Because I still feel like some of my friends are not included because at lunchtime, they put them in a corner. That's something that I don't like to see. I like to see like my friends get out and explore with the other kids because they're humans too. You can't sit a group of kids with intellectual disability in the corner just because you think they're going to mess up or do something. No, they're humans just like the rest of you guys, and they belong out there with y'all.
All right.
That's what I think.
So when your voice, well, I shouldn't say when, your voice is powerful already, okay, right? We can, right? Can I get some clicks or something? Wake up, everybody. As you use that voice, who do you want to have hear you the most? Do you want teachers to hear you? Do you want adults to hear you? Do you want politicians?
I want politicians. I want politicians and adults to hear me the most.
Okay. And so let's just say this was a room of senators right here. And maybe even the president was up there in the front row here where Caroline is on tweeting and stuff like that. What are you going to say to them right there? There's president, right? I'm not going to name names because it's not about politics here, but just imagine. You're a public speaker.
I want the president to know, if he was sitting here, is that I want this world to be a better place for young adults and kids with intellectual disabilities. I want them to feel important in this world. I want them to feel included. I want them to feel like they matter in this world.
Made to matter. Made to matter. Eddie, do you feel like you're working for justice when you play on a unified team, when you advocate for this work?
Absolutely, no question about it. Even at the Buffalo Bills, we have some kids come in on Mondays and Tuesdays night, and as she was saying, you can look and feel that they don't feel they have a place right now. They're kind of lost in the wash of things, and it's unfortunate and it's an injustice, the fact that, we have athletes, or they have their lane, professionals, doctors, lawyers, teachers, everybody has their lane. But when you think of these kids, growing up, they don't have a lane to really thrive and to be their own person. And as she was saying, like, you can't stick somebody in a corner and expect for the rest of that whole room not to disassociate themselves with them. Because with kind of that separation, you get cliques and, oh, well, they're not one of us, they're not one of the people, they're not one of the gang.
Right.
And with that, you get lost in the wash, and then that doesn't start from, oh, you're 25, you're 30, 35. That starts from middle school, high school, sitting in the corner during lunch. And those ripple effects carry out through the rest of life.
Right.
So with that's the very minute point where it all starts in regards to that injustice.
Starts to creep in, that
Exactly.
idea that I'm better, he's better, she's better, somebody's better than somebody else, somebody's lesser than somebody else, and all of a sudden you get to the point where you're an adult and you've missed the chance to heal that, and all of a sudden we have tension, division, we have racism,
100%.
sexism, all that homophobia, and I guess we call it ableism. I just call it othering. Like, you put someone else as the demon, the bad, the negative, the rejected person. And in some ways, that's the country we live in.
100%.
But you're right, it starts in that lunchroom,
Yep.
where you see some kids over there in the corner, or some kids sitting in the corner because they're told to sit in the corner. And this is a long history in our country. It's been about intellectual disability, but it's been about a lot of other issues too, right? And this is where I guess my last question to all of y'all is, one of our obstacles is actually the world of sports. Because the world of sports, I like to say, is like a pyramid. People think, Charles, man, that guy's fast, and then they walk by everybody else, right? Because you're good, or you're good, and I'm not so good. So all of a sudden, you get eliminated from sports. Most people, I don't know, put your date in your own mind now. What year did you stop playing sports? I think for girls, the average is like 12 and a half. And for boys, it's like 14 or 15. But the reason they stopped playing is someone told them they were no good. So part of what we want to do with the NCAA, with the NFL, with the professional leagues, with the high school federations, is say we want a different model of sport. We want sports to be more of a circle than a pyramid. How do we get sports people to see that you shouldn't be measured by whether you are the best, but rather by whether you do your best? That's our way of putting it. If you do your best, you're a champion, right? Like, as if you do your best, that deserves a medal, like your sister got. She brought those medals home, and boom, you won it in, right? How do we convince people in sports that that's an important role and value for sports? Maybe ask Jamaal and Eddie to start on that, because you guys know what it's like to be at the top.
Well, I know with sports it'd be really pretty hard. You know what I'm saying? I think we got some of the old generation still in there, and it would be fair if everybody can participate, everybody get to do it. I know just being a part of Special Olympics, man, doing sports with them, that's the most of the happy times I be around that they be smiling. Everything like that being around the surroundings of I have more fun than playing in the locker room. I'm just telling you. But trying to implement that in sports, it'd be very hard. But we got to get to a point where we got to find a way how to do it.
Right.
I know at the top of the peak where I played at, only the best people suit up on Sundays.
Right.
I'm just telling you.
Right.
If you heard of something like that, you don't suit up.
Right.
So I mean, growing up, you know what I'm saying, now when my kids now I get to see my kids play, we integrate that with all the kids. Everybody got to play. Don't matter if you're good, don't matter if you.
Beautiful.
You know what I'm saying? Don't
Your
matter.
kids play football?
Flag football.
Good. Good.
But I mean, I got to find a way how we can go by and
Yeah.
do that. It's
Right.
Sports is just something in its own world.
Yeah. Thoughts on that, Eddie?
And I would take it back to something that when we first started opening it up, that Jamaal said was that normalizing it. Is that, you know, in football, and especially in a NFL locker room, there's such a culture where it's only the best play. Only the best play. If you miss a tackle and the guy next to you makes 2 tackles, you make 1, that guy's playing. 100%. Jamaal fumbles, next guy up. So with that, we have to find a way to make it so it's not, to really kind of break that negative reinforcing cycle in regards to everybody. If you do your best, you have a voice, you matter.
Right. Right.
But in the culture that we have right now, it's that, you know, like you said, at the very top, if you're the elite of the elite, oh man, you got it.
Right.
But as you go down, as you trickle down, your voice is minimized, 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 and minimized.
14 years old, they tell kids you're not no good no more.
Right.
100%.
Yeah, you're not no good. Exactly. So we'll open it up. We've got about 15 minutes left. I have about 7 to 12 more questions I'd like to ask, but I don't want to be hogging it. Questions you might have, first of all, any questions are good. I'd like everyone in the room to answer the question, I wish all Americans knew. I wish all schools taught. And maybe share your thoughts on that or other questions you have here for the panel. At this moment, we have a microphone here. So we'll let that be, and if you're comfortable asking a question, jump up to the mic. If you have, there are Slido questions. Yes. I'd love to hear. Let's see if I can get this right. I'd love to hear the panel's response to the following question: what does inclusion mean to you? Okay, that's really good. That's great. So the word, I was shocked. I was in a middle school a couple weeks ago, and we asked that question, and about a couple of the kids had never heard the word. They didn't even know what it meant. Like it was like an SAT word. You know, like what does that mean? So sometimes we think inclusion, everybody gets it, but maybe it's not a word that communicates to all kids. Not all children even understand what it means. But what about you guys? What is inclusion? Erika, when you think, maybe you start us off, what does inclusion mean to you? How would you?
To me, it means all means all.
All means.
Everyone included in every environment, and the opportunity to, and also giving the students the self-determination to decide whether they want to be a part of something. You know, sometimes we decide things for students, and we just need to give them the options. All means all. Any setting, any classroom, any club, they can be a part of it.
Tasha?
It means to me to include everyone. Make sure that everyone's included. Don't leave no one out.
Made to matter?
Yeah,
Go-
made matter.
Okay.
Gotta hashtag that too, okay?
Nice. What do you think, Eddie? What's the
For me,
definition?
it means everybody has a voice. Everybody has that equal voice to say, yay, nay, I want to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of that freedom. But everybody has that voice to choose as they may.
Same. So another question here on Slido is, maybe it's the most difficult question. Maybe I was avoiding it because it's difficult. There are people that don't agree. Even today, there are people who would say this is ridiculous, it's a waste of money. Sports is about, you gotta have wins and losses. You gotta have winners and losers. Kids should learn if they're no good, that's not for them. They should do something else. Kids that don't measure up need to get put in a different track. I mean, this is a real point of view in the United States today. Some of it has to do with income. Some of it has to do with how much money we spend in school. Some of it has to do with a lot of other prejudices that are out there. How do you handle if you are in a conversation with someone who seriously disagrees with you on these kinds of issues, on inclusion and opportunity for what all means all?
Actually, I've came across this a lot in my life, so I got this. It's actually building a relationship. You have to build a relationship, and you have to find something in common with a person. As a special ed teacher and a case manager, you come across all kinds of different situations in your day, whether it's a student having a disagreement with a teacher, or two students having a disagreement, or maybe you want to start a unified sports program at your campus, and it's reaching out and building a relationship with the athletic director, building a relationship with the teacher, building relationships with students. And when someone really, really disagrees, if you can build a relationship with a person, find things in common, it kind of breaks down that wall. So it's responding with love and with kindness and acceptance, and not coming from a place of being defensive or angry. Just really taking the time to build the relationships and find that usually is what helps.
Can you do that in politics? I'm serious. No, I'm serious. If you have somebody who really disagrees with you politically, I'm not going to ask you which side you're on. That's not the point. But there are a lot of sides in the country.
I believe you can.
You can.
I believe you can. In a respectful manner.
Right.
And even when people disrespect you, it doesn't mean that you have to lower yourself to that. Because then they're not going to hear your point. They will never hear your point, and you're losing the battle.
Beautiful. Tasha, what happens when you're in school and somebody really disagrees with you still, and maybe in some way makes fun of you, or we talk about microaggressions. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but that means people that just do something to you that puts you down, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal. They just kind of put you down.
Oh, yeah.
I
have run across that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you something. If I have to write a speech and give a speech about that, I would. And then I will have my talking point.
Go ahead.
About it. I will say, this is why that should be there, and this is why this should be there.
Okay.
I do that a lot. Like, I run into that a lot because I'm so talkative about Special Olympics. Like, I like to get my point across to people. So, yeah.
So when you run into somebody who's not agreeing with you, how do you handle it?
Sometimes I get mad because it's like, why not?
Right.
Why not? Like, why don't you want to include students with intellectual disabilities? Why not include them in the school? Why not include them in the school sports? Why not? They're just humans. They're just like you. Just because they have a disability does not mean nothing at all. So yeah, include them. So yeah, sometimes that gets me really highly upset because they won't include those students.
But you try to convince them.
Yes, I do. I'm very good at that.
I'm pretty sure you succeed. I bet there's not that many people who still disagree after you're done with them. Eddie, what about you? You're in the rough and tumble world. You must see all the problems that exist in the culture in your life. You see people on the other side of these issues. How do you handle disagreeing with people who? When
I run into it, first of all, it's difficult because when you're passionate about something and you're invested in something, you kind of sometimes have to really kind of check your emotions. But it's hard because you're sitting there and you don't understand how, from that point of view, how you don't want everybody to be included, especially something that you enjoyed so much. So when I do run into it, I try to level the playing field and, kind of clear the air and say, okay, well, if you had so much enjoyment in participating, watching, being a bystander, if you had so much enjoyment in it, why would you ever, under any circumstances, deny that to somebody else?
Right.
And usually when I say that, at least sometimes it doesn't turn the whole ship around, but it kind of gets them turning and get the gears turning in the right direction. And really, in today's day and age, that's half the battle right there.
Right, just starting to turn the ship. Jamal?
Like Eddie said, I think it's real difficult to put your passion on somebody else because they're not going to get it, but you want them to get it. But, you know what I'm saying, including somebody, we will all feel like we would want to be doing the same thing everybody else is doing. We don't want to be left out. Like, I can tell you a story, because I was in a special ed class. The middle school people were going to Six Flags. And just because I was in special ed class, I didn't get to go. So, you know what I'm saying, like certain things like that, it still hurt me to this day because they make me feel like I'm not included in what they do and I'm left out. I feel like I'm just like Tasha was saying, basically just left in the corner.
Yeah.
And I wish everybody can get to a point where we are human, like Tasha keeps saying. We sing, we bleed just like they bleed. Why we can't do the things they do?
So again, I just want to say to the teachers and educators in the room how incredibly powerful and important your role is. Here's Jamal, 15 years later, seared, right? And we all have this. There was one moment in 6th grade or 4th grade or 7th grade, you know, but the idea that a teacher could cause that, but a teacher could prevent it is such a powerful role. And, you know, whenever I think sometimes educators beat themselves up, I know, and, you know, that we can't do much, and the culture's so, you know, and politics and the economy and all these other factors, racism and all these other things that are working against us, but at the same time, what a powerful role a teacher can play for the positive or the negative. Yes, let's go to the floor. Can I invite you to ask your question?
Yes, thank you so much for all 5 of you for being here and for speaking this truth and for pushing us forward. I had a question about how you see this work shifting off of the sports fields and out of the cafeterias into the classrooms. Why do we allow education to still segregate children in classrooms?
Erika, want to start with that one?
Well, I can't speak for every school because different schools have different systems. But I also know that there is such a wide variety of needs across special education and disabilities. And you can meet one student with Down syndrome and you can meet another student with Down syndrome. And the one thing I can tell you that I know for a fact is that they're not the same and they have different needs and different abilities. And so while it may be empowering to a student and the best for a student to go to a US history class and they are getting so much out of that, there could be a different student who needs different type of instruction, and that we meet students where we're at to push them and get their information out. Just because a student is in a life class or a resource level class or a gen ed level class should not mean that they are not being pushed to master and to their fullest potential. And so I think that when you are, for example, in a self-contained for certain periods of the day, because you need that sort of instruction and the teacher, what you could do is, for example, we have a program called peer tutoring. So we have gen ed peers that come into our classroom and we do the learning side by side that way. And so I don't think it's necessarily this big push for not going into a special ed classroom, but perhaps if that is the setting for that student, bringing in the inclusion into that classroom to provide that for everybody, to meet everybody's needs.
Any others want to comment on this issue? I mean, I know it's a big issue. A lot of people, yeah, come on up. No. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, we've just got a couple more minutes left, so happy to shift gears, but I'll comment on that after your question, yeah.
Sorry. I coach track and field, and we have para athletes in our track and field for those with learning disabilities, and it's great, and it's awesome. And some of our greatest athletes in my school are our para athletes, but it's always viewed as a less than accomplishment. I have a girl who's the second best in our province, and we cheer for her, but they always kind of, oh, well, it's still the LD division. Do you have any suggestions on how to fight that perception?
Yes. I would start by building my relationships with my administrators and my athletic directors. Invite them out to the competitions. Use social media, record their practices, share some of that out so students and staff could see how hard they work and that they're working at the same level as other sports. Make friends with your cheer coach and make sure they're included in all the pep rallies. Not a special pep rally for the Special Olympics. A pep rally, when they do the basketball sports, then the unified basketball team gets recognized along with the girls team and the boys team. So just authentically in there, but build those relationships and invite people out. They don't know, and sometimes us as teachers, we're in this little, we're looking straight forward and we forget on our end to invite people out. And I think that the more you do that and the more you share that with the campus, hey, we're competing here on this day, and have those students come out, it starts to build a momentum and bigger crowds and so forth.
I would also just, go ahead.
Find the eddies.
Find the eddies.
As a coach, you have that ability, and find the eddies.
They'll help. I think there's also, if I can jump in on this one, I think we have to remind kids, not just what all kids are overcoming or what they've put in or how much they've practiced, which I think is very important, but over time, it says 46 seconds. Sorry. I think we have to remind, what I like to say is that there are multiple lessons in sport. And when you look at Eddie and Jamaal talking about their experience, you see their eyes almost change, And so when we talked about this panel being a panel to talk about what matters most, I think it's important to remember that when you talk about raw guts, bravery, courage, determination, there's nobody in the NFL that can outdo Tasha. And I don't mean that to be nice. I'm not being sweet. I'm not being patronizing. I'm not being cute. I'm not being like, let's all have a cute little medal. No, BS. If I can put it this way, nobody. And I know there's good athletes in the NFL, don't get me wrong, but they don't have more determination than she does. So if you want to admire somebody for how fast they run, admire Jamaal. If you want to admire somebody for how much determination they muster in pursuit of a goal, admire Tasha, full stop, right? I don't mean not Jamaal, because he's got a lot of determination too, but you can get my point. So we got to reintroduce the lessons that matter most in sport so that we can see how sport reveals the qualities that matter most in all kids. That would be my way of trying to answer that. Now I am over time. We are over time. Last point, last word.
I would say to start building those relationships early, early intervention. Early intervention is also the key.
I agree, and just in that regard, our movement has a unified, what we call young athlete program. It starts at age 2 to help kids to learn to play together at the very earliest stages, so we never have to undo a negative attitude. We only construct attitudes of inclusion. Let's give it up for this panel. #MadeToMatter. All right, thank you guys.